Special town meeting of Monday, October 17, 2022 to order. Ms. Reed.
Welcome and thank you all. Thank you all for showing up. For the first action tonight, I move that the town vote to dispense with the reading of the warrant except for the preamble, conclusion, and attestation thereof. Yes, feedback.
Been moved and seconded.
Can't hear me? Okay, one more time. I move that the town vote to dispense with the reading of the warrant, except for the, you hear the feedback though? The preamble, conclusion, and attestation thereof.
Do we have a second? Been moved and seconded. The preamble. Commonwealth of Massachusetts, Barnstable, SS, to either of the constables of the town of Orleans and the county of Barnstable, greetings. In the name of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, you are hereby directed to notify and warn the inhabitants of said town qualified to vote in town affairs to meet at the Nauset Middle School Gymnasium in said Orleans on Monday, the 17th of October in the year 2022 at 6 p.m. to act on the following 36 articles. The attestation. Given under our hands this 21st day of September in the year of our Lord 2022, Andrea Shaw Reed, Chairman Michael Allen Herman, Mark W. Matheson, Kevin F. Galligan, Mefford R. Runyon, Orleans Select Board, a true copy attest Kelly L. Darling, Town Clerk, and the conclusion, Barnstable SS, pursuant to the within warrant, I have notified and warned the inhabitants of the town of Orleans by posting up attested copies of the special town meeting to be held on Monday, October 17th, 2022 at the Orleans Post Office, South Orleans Post Office, and East Orleans Post Office 14 days before the date, time, and place of the meeting as within directed, Mary E. Stevens, Constable. Okay, if people could kind of keep the background noise down a little bit. Thank you. Ms. Reed.
Did we vote? We read it. Did we vote? Okay.
All those in favor of dispensing with the warrant, or excuse me, all those in favor of dispensing with the reading of the warrant, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay. Now, Ms. Reed.
Thank you. I move that all town officials or department managers or the duly designated representative required to attend town meeting pursuant to Section 273 of the Charter, Brooke Clenchy, Nauset Regional School Superintendent, and Laura Kelly, an Eastham resident, all of whom are not residents of the town of Orleans, be permitted to address this special town meeting on matters affecting their office, department or organization, or projects for which they have performed services for the town.
Wait a second. Been moved and seconded. All those in favor of giving those people the power of speech, please respond by saying aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. Okay. Article 1. Mr. Runyon.
Mr. Moderator, I move this article be accepted and adopted as printed in the warrant, and that the sum of $116,503 be raised and appropriated, and that the sum of $64,953 be transferred from free cash for the purpose set forth in the article.
Been moved and seconded.
The only comment I would make on this is that the first two items on here are to fund positions that are related to Article 19, which is the short-term rental article. So if the order here is a little bit off, but should you approve this article and should the short-term rental fail, those two numbers 1 and 2 will become moot.
Any questions? Yes, ma'am.
Would it be appropriate to ask
Could I have your name, please?
Oh, I'm sorry. Deborah Winnick, 8 Windy Hill Lane. Would it be appropriate to ask why several members of the Finance Committee voted against this?
Absolutely. Nick Athanasiou, the chair of the Finance Committee.
Thank you. Tonight, you're being asked to consider 35 warrant articles, 36 actually, warrant articles. There are 5 of these with split Finance Committee member votes. For 4 of these, one of us will explain both sides of the vote to help you make your own decisions. The first of the 5 warrant articles for which we split our vote is Article number 1. Our vote was 2 for and 3 against. 4 of us were absent on the day of the voting. Article 1 proposes funding 12 budget adjustments for the current fiscal year. These adjustments total approximately $181,000. They are needed to cover increased costs due to changing operating environment and new programs. The great proportion of these adjustments will add town employee position hours and overtime hours. These added position hours and overtime hours are needed to give relief to some of our overstretched administrative system. And this is the reason that some of us voted for this warrant article's approval. Among the budget adjustments, $59,000 are being requested, as MEF just told you, to increase the capacity of the health department because that capacity is needed assuming we vote for the short-term rental bylaw. And here's the issue. Article 1 asks you to approve funds for a program that as of this moment doesn't exist. The new short-term rental bylaw is the 19th warrant article you're going to be asked to approve tonight. If you decide not to vote on Article 19, the funds you approve for it in Article 1 will not be spent and they will end up as free cash. Some of us cannot support a request to approve funds now for an article that has not been approved yet. Particularly so since we have voted against Article 19, as you will see in the warrant. Those of us who support Article 1 and some of us who voted against it recognize that 2 of its 12 articles pose a procedural problem, as explained by MEF. Further, we believe that the relative magnitude of the problem is maybe small, too small to reject the entire article. After all, what we're talking about here is 1/3 of the total requested amount. Remember, the fundamental purpose of Article 1 adjustments is to recognize that we need more employee time and expertise to get our town's business done. In other words, we may not support how this article was crafted, but we don't want to, quote, throw out the baby with the bathwater. Thank you.
Yes, sir. In the rear.
This may be a little out of order in terms of looking at articles, but since there's so much controversy about Article 19, why don't we look at that first before going back to Article 1?
Your name, please?
Andrew Burling, 95 Nauset Heights Road.
Okay, I think there's someone that's going to get up and make a motion that we do exactly that. But I'll take you next, sir. Excuse me? If you want to...
I'll make a motion that we review Article 19 before we review Article 1.
So what your
Can I have a second?
Excuse me, Mr. Burling. Would you say that you would like to make a motion to consider Article 1 out of order and at the end of the meeting?
I would say that Article 1, 19 is the critical point about Article 1. So why don't we review 19? And if that is met with approval, then I think you would overcome hurdles to Article 1.
So, when would you like it to be heard? Before
Now.
Article 20?
Right now.
No.
Since this is, if you decide 19 now,
Oh, you wanna-
know what to, yes, then you know what to do with Article 1. This seems to be the sticky point. You brought that up. So why not address that now? I know it's out of order, but
Note that you can make that motion
I'm making that motion.
to consider Article 19 out of order and consider it now.
Correct. I make that motion. Thank you.
Is there a second to Mr. Burling's motion? Okay. That is debatable. Is there any debate on taking this article out of order? Any comments or questions? Okay, that requires a 2/3 majority to take Article 19 out of order and take it up with the body now. So I'm going to ask you to get your clickers ready, and when the green light comes on, press 1 to consider 19 out of order, and 2 to stay with the warrant the way that it is. Yes, while the green light is on, we're tabulating the votes. The first few are going to tabulate for 30 seconds. Once everybody gets a little more comfortable, we'll try and speed it up. Thank you. Okay. The article passes by the 2/3 majority, 342 to 36. So, we are now moving Mr. Matheson, we're moving to Article 19.
Article 19, to amend the general bylaw requiring licensing of short-term rentals. I move that this article be accepted and adopted as printed in the warrant.
Been moved and seconded. Any comments, Mark?
This article has been the subject of public hearings. I know people have questions about this article. However, what we are proposing here tonight is the registration of short-term rentals within the town of Orleans. As most of you know, the state of Massachusetts requires the registration of those short-term rentals. There is a fund that is set up to handle the taxation of those short-term rentals. And in fact, about $1.5 million of that money comes back to the town of Orleans, and it's paying for our sewer infrastructure, paying the debt on that sewer infrastructure. So what we're looking for in the town of Orleans is not to have to rely on the state for information, because we've found it to be somewhat inaccurate at times and ambiguous, but to register the short-term rentals within the town. There's a fee of $50 for 2 bedrooms or less, $50 per bedroom over 2. The fee would support the review of the short-term rental application by our health department or our assessor's office to ensure that the property is up to specifications in terms of a Title V system, that health and safety issues appear to be okay on paper. As I said, we're not looking for inspections to be done on every short-term rental in town. We just need to document what we have in the town of Orleans. There are other towns on the Cape that have been doing this for a number of years. In fact, many of them do all rentals in town, not just short-term. as a way of providing the town with the information it needs to keep track of properties that are being run as a business. So that's kind of where we are, and that's what we're proposed. There are not onerous regulations in this. It's a registration process to assist the town in monitoring, as I said, the health and well-being for our citizens and our visitors.
Before I open this up to questions, Alyssa Magnata of the Finance Committee would like to speak to the Finance Committee's findings on this article.
Thank you. Good evening. As you can see in the warrant, the Finance Committee voted against this article, and my colleagues have good points for your consideration. One voiced that the special town meeting is not the time for a bylaw change and suggested such votes be reserved for our annual town meeting in spring. A couple are not in favor of having more government involved or bureaucracy that needs to be funded every year. And others agreed in the concept of a rental registration, but not the specifics of this bylaw as written. I am the sole member who voted for this article. And I did so because of my professional and personal experience owning rental properties in other towns that already have a similar registration program. As an owner, I know firsthand it's not burdensome to register the property. I simply see it as a cost of doing business. The minimal fee is baked into our operating costs. Private homes that operate as a business should be required to adhere to the same standards as their commercial counterparts. Capacity limits in hotel rooms and bed and breakfasts exist already, and they are determined by the town, not the business owner. I also voted in favor of this because we have a housing shortage and an affordability crisis in our region. And we need real-time data about what housing already exists and how it is used so that we can make investments in the type of housing that is missing. Rentals are a key component in our overall housing ecosystem, and rental registration is the first step in this process. Additionally, there are 3 other towns that have a similar registration and monitoring program. They have confirmed that the rental registration program gives them the ability to monitor their housing stock, ensure the safety of their residents and their visitors, and provides enforceable rules so that the health department and police department can intervene when necessary. They also confirmed there is no reduction in the number of short-term rentals in their towns. Lastly, I voted for this program because it pays for itself from the fees collected, so there is minimal impact on our town finances. I know it's not popular, but it's the reality of where we are. Thank you.
Questions or comments on Article 19? Yes, sir.
Dave Ortolani, Anchor Drive. What's that? I would be against this, primarily because of the issue of this being a special town meeting. This impacts a lot of landowners, property owners who aren't on the Cape right now and should have a voice. It's a creation of a new program with hiring software and 4 pages of regulations that also belongs at a town meeting, and it's noted as not, the basic requirements, but it's a lot of regulations, 4 pages worth. There's already state laws and local zoning laws that cover the bulk of this. This is an extra layer of bureaucracy on top of that. And then even we voted the 6% increase in this 6% tax to help fund the sewer budget, which, as the gentleman mentioned, was about 1.5 million last year. I don't know why we would be putting onerous burden on that income source and discouraging it. We're basically creating a department with fees that fund the department for regulations that already exist.
Yes, sir.
Yes, very good points. And the other thing
Your name, please.
Andrew Burling, 95 Nauset Heights Road. I would also say a lot of this issue seems to have come up because of disturbance of the peace and noise and trash pickup. Now, these issues can be handled outside of a separate department. And if you want to have equal application of the law, this may not be popular to all town residents, But if there is a disturbance of the peace, then we fine everyone involved in that disturbance, whether you're a landlord or a property owner, and people, happen to be celebrating too loud, or they left their trash out. I think there should be equal application. So if you're going to fine people, then fine everyone, not just landlords. Okay, there's a trash problem down here on this street, or there's a disturbance problem. The fines are fine, but to apply them to one specific group, I think, is patently unfair. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Yes, ma'am.
Renee Andre, Rock Harbor Road. I would like to hear from someone from the Finance Committee who was not in favor of that article.
Who wants to take charge with that? This works out fine. Lynn Bruno wasn't scheduled to talk, but she can now.
I was a Girl Scout for a really long time, so I've come prepared. Lynn Bruno, Chair Emerita of the Finance Committee. So I talked at the Orleans Citizens Forum a couple weeks ago and talked about this. And what we had talked about with regard to this particular one, as highlighted in a few comments that my colleague had made, the vote was 1 for, 5 against, and 2 abstaining. Part of our concerns were the proposed, we knew the proposed program would work on a calendar year basis. We've talked about what the fee would be, but it's unclear who will monitor compliance with these rules that are included in the bylaw as written in your warrants. It's meant to be a registration program, but there are a great number of rules that are included in the warrant that include things like occupancy, but also parking, as well as things like smoke detectors and carbon monoxide alarms. And it talks about reasonable inspections or verification by the Board of Health and all other agencies and departments of the town. The health department itself is not specifically named. So the one in Article 1 that's meant to pay for that's meant to supervise all this is not specifically named in the article. This is another thing that's of concern. At the regulations, there could be more regulations coming or policies and procedures by the Select Board with comments from the Board of Health and others, but there's no mention of further town meeting approval, though perhaps it would be needed if the bylaw is amended, because we need to have town meeting approval when we amend bylaws. You all know that, unless it's done through a Select Board policy and not in the bylaw itself. The cover admin costs. It cannot raise money because that would be a tax, and we're not allowed to have a tax to cover the short-term rental program. So then we come back to those items that are in Article 1. The line item number 1 is to raise and appropriate $37,000 for department salaries to cover the funding for additional resources for the first 6 months of the program, because it would start January 1. And then there's another in the line item, second line item in Article 1, raise and appropriate $22,000 for software for the registration program. So those first 2 line items in Article 1 that we postponed so we could work on this, $59,000 for the short-term rental program. And that would be in the current budget, the fiscal 23 budget that we're currently in. So as noted also in the article, the Select Board could raise or lower the registration fee or change it after public hearing, but they might not need town meeting approval, according to Town Code Section 94-8. So again, good points made at recent select board meetings through the number of short-term rental units in the town is unclear. The town hall number differs from the state number. Town hall thinks we have about 650 or so. The state thinks we have 715. So we're not quite sure what we're doing here. Enforcement, as I noted, could be challenging. It's not clear how many complaints there have actually been or the nature and the size. Are we creating a bigger solution than the current problem? Does the current level of complaint justify the proposed bureaucracy and the cost of the bureaucracy? Have there been just a few big complaints or dozens of all kinds and sizes? The program should be self-funding but not a revenue source. I said that. Registration program. What homework has the town done to see what others are doing and how effective it has been? So as noted by the gentleman in the far corner, the short-term rental tax received by the town is all used for wastewater projects. We don't want to jeopardize that revenue stream by coming down too hard on short-term rental entrepreneurs, especially the mom-and-pop operations that use this revenue as an important source of family income. So the bottom line for 5 of the members of the Finance Committee, we don't support it as written. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
15 Country Lane. I appreciate the comments that were just made from the Finance Committee. I mean, that really speaks to me and makes a lot of sense. Things that I was concerned about, where it just seemed like we were focusing on the landlords and saying, hey, you've generously given us access to people who want to rent your properties. Now we're going to take that 6% and give it to Orleans, but now let's go after some more money from you really overly wealthy people who happen to rent another property. My husband and I are basically one of those mom and pops that you were talking about. It supplements our income, and so to also be the target of additional fees just feels wrong to me. The other thing is that there just seems to be a little bit of too much overreach in what's being required. For example, giving a full and complete list of persons who have a direct or indirect interest. And it's like, wow, there's certain issues of privacy here. Why would we want to have a whole string of people that have indirect interests as a requirement? The other thing might be, give your current residential address. That's a little restrictive only because there are some people who have more than one place that they live and not in Orleans. So if they happen to be in the other place, if it was permitted to have a P.O. box instead of an actual residential address, then that gives some flexibility of still getting your notices because you can redirect mail. Or, using a business address makes sense too. Some of the other things, for example, this is section 132.6, contact information. They ask for someone to be in person to resolve a problem. That's not always possible or practical. So I'm saying, let's delete that. The other thing is change the verbiage to provide action in case someone calls for an emergency within 1 hour. You can't even get your dentist to pick up the phone, in an hour. So, I mean, you have to wait till the next business day, and if it's a holiday, then you have to wait for the holiday. So that seems really restrictive and unreasonable to me, as well as I think one thing that would be helpful is if they said, okay, here's an ability to give emergency numbers, not just a single number, because some people are not there, but maybe they'll have somebody else that can be called. So if a true emergency happens, there's more than one person to address. And then with regards to keeping the register, that just seemed so broad to me. It said, whoever contacts you, Board of Health, police, fire, that they can ask for the register. Well, that's too broad. You don't need all that information about all the 12 people that you had at your place during the summer, all the different rentals. You just need to focus on that one possible rental during this specific date time that was giving you problems. I think that that's reasonable to ask for, but not the whole register. So it's not really I feel, being restrictive enough where if we have to provide information to one of the boards or, agencies, that they give us, oh, is that my warning?
No.
That we put some rules around that. Okay, that's the last thing I want to say. Okay, and the last section that I wanted to say, with regards to having inspections, it would be nice to say that we put some ropes around that too, because people who are renting, they don't want to have to bother the person who paid for time to have a nice, peaceful, enjoyable time on the Cape, to have to now vacate because someone's going to come in and count your bedrooms and measure up and all of this. So again, not enough rules around things that I think are bordering on invasion or overreach. The final thing that I wanted to mention, I'm sorry I'm taking all this time, is that, has anyone explored any other options? So, for example, instead of all this very labor-intensive manpower stuff, the way people get their registrations now for, or their permits, let's say, for having a mooring or whatever other kind of permit registrations you have, people, they put their name in online, they pay online. Can we think of another procedure of maybe cutting down on the additional labor and overhead, which, by the way, never goes away. Once you hire an employee, they never go away. And then, they have all these additional expenses. So I would like it if there could be someone who says, let's look at this in a different model, like the permit model, so that owners can put their information in, and as needed, it can be verified. People are saying, you're lying, you had a big party at your house, it was Animal House. So now we're going to actually go in and verify that all the stuff that you verified that you were doing, you weren't doing, and now we're going to have to, sorry, but we're going to have to assess a violation. But in the meantime, it doesn't sort of place that burden on the rest of people who are really trying to play by the rules and do a good job and make the Cape a wonderful place to be. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am?
Alexis Matheson, Beach Road. I was lucky enough to grow up in Orleans and was even more fortunate to purchase a home of my own before things really got crazy with COVID. And I can say that for many of my friends and classmates who also grew up here or who are trying to live here now, that's not possible. I'm a member of the Affordable Housing Trust, and along with the Affordable Housing Committee, we are trying to know and research the type of properties, residences, rentals that we have in town now. We have a housing crisis. And this article will give us information. It's just a registration. In order to spend our money that the trust receives from every town meeting, that we receive from the CPC in order to provide housing, we want to make sure that we're making the best decisions possible. This will give us that information of what type of homes we already have in town and how they're being used. As Ms. Bruno said, there is a discrepancy. Yes, the state does give us this information, but it's not always perfect. Okay, there are discrepancies. We want to make sure that we, in town hall, in our town, know what's being done and know how things are being used so that we can work to solve our housing problems. Thank you.
Mr. Runyon.
Hi, Matt Runyon from East Orleans, and I'm speaking just as for myself, not for the board, but this subject for me is part of a bigger problem in town, which is I call the commercialization of the residential district, and it encompasses a lot more than just what we're talking about tonight, but this town, as well as the other towns on the Cape and around the country, are confronting a business model that was developed long after any of our zoning regulations were put on the books. So I do believe that a lot of this is commercial activity that's being conducted in the residential zone, and to some extent it's a distributed motel business where all the room rentals are done online, There's a centralized management office that comes down and cleans the houses, mows the lawn, does the whole thing, and that is a pure, in my mind, commercial activity. And I think that we have seen a impact on residential living, and there was, from the beginning of zoning, an intention of separating commercial activity from residential life. And that is what I hope you would agree with me on. Thank you.
Mr. Short.
Len Short, Orleans. I would like to move the question.
Do I have a second? Okay, it's been moved and seconded to move the question. No.
Oh, okay. Just happens that Matt Runyon is
Mr.
on the
Burley.
select board.
This requires a 2/3 majority. Please get your clickers ready. All those in favor of moving the question, please press 1 for yes, 2 for no.
This is the vote to move the question.
Beg your pardon, everybody.
The motion to move the question passes 314 to 111. So we're down back to the main motion. There's no more discussion. We're going to use the clickers again. All those in favor of Article 19, press 1. All those opposed to Article 19, press 2, please. This is a simple majority. The article fails. 182 in favor, 261 opposed. Okay, now we are going to go back to Article 1. And are you prepared to deal with Article 1 with the change that's occurred with? Town Council is going to craft Article 1 in a manner that will no longer be impacted by Article 19, and as soon as he has that ready for us, they will be back. Thank you. So Mr. Runyon is going to make a motion to amend the main motion which is on the floor for Article 1. That we will vote on the amendment, then we'll vote on the article.
Okay. I move this article be accepted and adopted as, I move that we amend Article 1 to read, I move this article be accepted and adopted as printed in the warrant, except that items 1 and 2 be deleted, and the sum of $57,503 be raised and appropriated, and that the sum of $64,953 be transferred from free cash for the purposes set forth in the article.
Do I have a second? Any discussion? So this is on the amendment. You're speaking to the amendment. Please.
Can you take the line out of the summary that says to fund the short-term rental startup program to go into effect on January 1st, 2023, to cover the additional costs associated with increasing the hours? Well, I don't know about the part-time clerk, but I don't think it should be
I don't see that.
tied to the rental program. It's in the summary.
Excuse me, ma'am, which number?
It's the summary on number 1. I think you need to delete the reference to the short-term rental setup program.
So the summary has no impact on the motion or the
Okay.
article. So any other comments on the amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor of the amendment to Article 1, please. Oh, I'm sorry, ma'am. I didn't see you.
Hi, Marty Verdina, Orleans. Shouldn't number 4 also be excluded because it has in there $6,000 for funding overtime hours for 2 principal clerks and assistant health agent position? And wasn't that assistant health agent position going to be part of the $37,000?
Mr. Kelly.
Sorry about that. No, the existing staff, we are trying to get away from comp time by paying overtime. This has no bearing on the short-term rental program.
Any other questions? Okay. This requires a simple majority to amend the motion. All those in favor of amending Article 1 as written, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Now back to the main motion for Article 1. Do you have any further comments on that, Meph?
No.
Any comments or questions on Article 1 as amended? Again, this is a simple majority vote. All those in favor of Article 1, please respond by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Article passes unanimously. Article 2.
So Articles 2 and 3, which I'm going to read, are somewhat connected or related, and they're both going to be a little bit different when I read them than what you're seeing in the warrant. And it's being done this way because we're trying to keep the 3-year contract in the 3 separate fiscal years, and that's, I think, you'll see what that means when I read it. So Article 2, I move that this article be accepted and adopted to approve the Orleans Police Federation contract covering the period of July 1st, 2022 to June 30th, 2025, and that the sum of $16,000 be raised and appropriated for this purpose and be added to the fiscal year 23 Police Department salaries account budget. provided, however, that this vote shall not take effect until the town votes pursuant to Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 59, Section 21C, to assess an additional $16,000 in real estate and personal property taxes for the purpose of funding the Orleans Police Federation collective bargaining agreement for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2022. And the town votes pursuant to Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 59, Section 21C, to assess an additional $45,000 in real estate and personal property taxes for the purpose of funding the Orleans Police Federation collective bargaining agreement for the fiscal year commencing July 1st, 2023. And the town votes pursuant to Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 59, Section 21C, to assess an additional $104,000 in real estate and personal property taxes for the purpose of funding the Orleans Police Federated collective bargaining agreement for the fiscal year commencing July 1st, 2024.
Do I have a second? Been moved and seconded. Any questions? I wouldn't have any questions after that either. All those in favor, this is a simple majority. All those in favor of Article 2, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Article passes unanimously. Article 3.
Mr. Moderator, I move that this article be accepted and adopted to approve the New Orleans Permanent Firefighters Association Local 2675 IAFF contract covering the period of July 1st, 2022 to June 30th, 2025, and that the sum of $75,100 be raised and appropriated for this purpose and be added to the fiscal year 23 Fire Department salaries account budget, provided, however, that this vote shall not take effect until the town votes pursuant to Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 59, Section 21C, to assess an additional $75,100 in real estate and personal property taxes for the purpose of funding the New Orleans Permanent Firefighters Association Local 2675 IAFF collective bargaining agreement for the fiscal year commencing July 1st, 2022, and the town votes pursuant to Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 59, Section 21C, to assess an additional $65,500 in real estate and personal property taxes for the purpose of funding the New Orleans Permanent Firefighters Association Local 2675 IAFF collective bargaining agreement for the fiscal year commencing July 1st, 2023, and the town votes pursuant to Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 59, Section 21C, to assess an additional $163,400 in real estate and personal property taxes for the purpose of funding the New Orleans Permanent Firefighters Association Local 2675 IAFF collective bargaining agreement for the fiscal year commencing July 1st, 2024.
Do I have a second? Been moved and seconded. Any questions? Again, this is a simple majority vote. All those in favor of Article 3, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Article passes unanimously. Just one second. Kathy Doan, the finance director, just asked me to remind all of you that these are ballot questions that are coming up when we vote next month, and if we approve it now and we don't vote it at the ballot box, it's all for naught. So please remember to vote in November. December.
If I could just add, the ballot will have 3 separate questions for the fire department and 3 separate questions for the police department. So each one of those individual fiscal years will be an override question for you to answer, hopefully favorably.
Article 4.
Mr. Moderator, I move that this article be accepted and adopted as printed in the warrant, and that the sum of $353,875 be transferred from the Sewer Enterprise Fund balance for this purpose.
It's been moved and seconded. Any questions? This is a 9/10 vote is required, so I'm going to need a unanimous voice vote in order to pass this. Otherwise, we'll go to the clickers. Oh, I have a question in the rear.
Clint Canega, Anchor Drive. Just wanted to ask if it's realistic that 480 sewer connections happen between now and the end of the fiscal year. I believe it's June 30th. Seems a little unrealistic. I guess the money goes into the Sewer Enterprise Fund, but it seemed to me like it might have made more sense to fund half of them or something. But maybe, I don't know if anybody can speak to that, but that's going to be in 7 months, almost 500 sewer connections. Has anybody thought about that?
I'll try to answer that. This money actually had been approved in last fiscal year, and the work didn't go forward, so this money was returned to the enterprise fund. If for some reason all this money is not spent, if all 480 sewer connections aren't finished in time to be inspected, this money would again revert back to the Sewer Enterprise Fund, and you would be asked again to transfer money out to cover those costs. Is there anything more that Tom's here?
Any other questions? Tom.
Hi.
Mr. Daly.
Thank you. Tom Daly, Director of Public Works. It was an excellent question, actually, with some significant forethought. So the timing of the sewer connections, it is a bit of a moving target. We are trying to be conservative with our estimates. As Mr. Runyon said, whatever is not spent goes right back into the wastewater stabilization fund. And you'll see an article within the sewer budget at the next Maytown meeting for any additional amount we need. So I do ask that you support it as funded. I can't just pull a number out of my hat saying, what's the real number going to be? This is a conservative number, and it'll go right back in. So we're just kind of taking it out, making it available for now. We're going to need most of it. I just don't know what the exact number is, so I just hope you support it as written. But it was an excellent question.
Any other questions? And this is a simple majority, forgive me. All those in favor of Article 4, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Article passes unanimously. Article 5.
This is the 9/10. Article 5, I move this article be accepted and adopted, and the sum of $7,900 be transferred from free cash to pay the following unpaid bills. The Water Department to the Barnstable County Health Laboratory,
do I have a
$30.
second? Moved and seconded.
Okay, so you don't want me...
No, it's okay. Go ahead.
The first one is the Water Department, $30 to the Barnstable County Health Laboratory. The next is the Beaches Enterprise for Red Cross training, $450. A bill for heating and cooling at the Police Department for $934, and an insurance bill to the Town Administrator's Office for $5,595, totaling $7,009.
Any questions? This does require a 9/10 vote. All those in favor, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Article passes unanimously. Article 6.
I move this article be accepted and adopted as printed in the warrant, and that the sum of $40,000 be transferred from free cash for this purpose.
Been moved and seconded. Any questions, comments? All those in favor of Article 6, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Article passes unanimously. Article 7. Mr. Galligan.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Good evening. Article 7, Orleans Elementary School HVAC, which stands for Heating, Ventilation, and Air Conditioning Upgrade Construction Project. I move that this article be accepted and adopted as printed in the warrant, and that the sum of $1,400,000 be transferred from free cash for this purpose and for costs incidental and related thereto.
Been moved and seconded.
Mr. Moderator, if I could, in addition to the summary on page 16 of your warrant booklet, with the technical and engineering input to the school committee has prioritized the upgrade of the existing heating and ventilation systems to make the facility more energy efficient, productive, and safe for all who work and learn at the Orleans Elementary School. The current mechanical equipment is beyond its useful life. It is inefficient, it is difficult and costly to maintain. The proposed equipment will have a useful life of at least 15 years, which will allow time for the evaluation of a long-term campus-wide capital improvement plan. Funding for this is from available free cash, as the appropriation will not be added to the tax rate. The Select Board voted unanimously in support of this article. Thank you.
Any questions? All those in favor of Article 7, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Article passes unanimously. Article 8.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Article 8, Fund Rock Harbor Fuel Tanks Replacement. I move that this article be accepted and adopted as printed in the warrant, and that the sum of $30,000 be transferred from free cash for this purpose and for costs incidental and related thereto.
Been moved and seconded.
Mr. Moderator, the summary, again on page 18 of the warrant booklet, gives a great description of the plan that is to replace 2 underground fuel storage tanks behind the commercial bulkhead at Rock Harbor with 2 above-ground tanks. This article is just for the funds needed to complete the permitting and design work. We'll be back in May for construction funding, and I checked with Tom Daly just at the beginning of the meeting today, and we actually did get the award from the Coastal Zone Management for the grant for that work. So this is really essential to be able to be in a position to receive that grant from the state. Thank you.
Any questions or comments? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Judith Nash, 10 Zion Way. My question is, Rock Harbor is so beautiful. What will visitors and residents alike think of 2 oil tank, huge things on the surface as opposed to underground? Why can't they be replaced, refurbish the underground ones so that they're not visible?
Great question. I see our DPW director mobilizing as we speak. Mr. Daly.
Thank you. Appreciate that. One reason we wouldn't have gotten the grant, I'll be quite honest with you, to do that. This is a coastal resiliency grant. You know, as seas are rising, et cetera, this is a resiliency grant. So it makes our ability and the safety of the tanks for long-term viable. So that's why we got the grant. Now, they won't be 2 large metal structures. They might be concrete, like concrete blocks type of thing. But we're not opposed. We're just going into that level of design now, and we're not opposed to doing some kind of screening and things like that, as long as we can still operate the tank safely. And from a technology standpoint, you know, the trend is definitely go to above ground, because you can see it leaking as opposed to not seeing it if it's underground. So it's just more environmentally friendly. Thank you.
Any other questions? All those in favor of Article 8, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Article passes unanimously. Article 9.
Thank you. Article 9, Fund Compensation Study for Managers, Steelworkers, Clerical and Technical Unions and Personnel Bylaw. I move that this article be accepted and adopted as printed in the warrant, and that the sum of $25,000 be transferred from free cash for this purpose.
Been moved and seconded. Kevin?
Just briefly, Mr. Moderator, in addition to the summary on page 19, the town has agreed as part of our most recent 3-year union contracts to conduct this study so that the results can be available before we begin negotiations with our next contract. Thank you.
Any questions? All those in favor of Article 9, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Passes unanimously. Article 10.
Article 10, Mr. Moderator, Fund New Town Manager Search. I move that this article be accepted and adopted as printed in the warrant, and that the sum of $30,000 be transferred from free cash for this purpose.
Been moved and seconded.
Just one brief comment. As we go down the road of search for a town manager, I think it's appropriate that we all give a round of applause for our current town administrator, who will be wrapping up his service to us. And I believe, John, this is your last town meeting. So. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Any questions or comments on Article 10? All those in favor of Article 10, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The article passes by the simple majority vote required.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Article 11, Fund Economic Value Study of Rock Harbor and Nauset Harbor. I move that this article be accepted and adopted as printed in the warrant, and that the sum of $15,000 be transferred from free cash for this purpose.
Been moved and seconded.
Mr. Moderator, we know that Rock Harbor and Nauset Harbor and the businesses and people who enjoy them have significant economic value, but to date, we have not collected this direct and indirect information so we can use it to promote our harbor capital projects. A similar study was done in 2020 for the harbors in Chatham, Dennis, Falmouth, and Provincetown, and those were able to confirm the importance of maintaining and upgrading harbor infrastructure as well as supporting grant opportunities. The Select Board voted unanimously in favor of this article. Thanks.
The FinCom voted unanimously, voted 7 in favor with 1 abstention. Any questions or comments on this article? All those in favor of Article 11, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Article passes by the simple majority vote required. Article 12.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Article 12, Fund Vehicles and Equipment Stabilization Fund. I move that this article be accepted and adopted as printed in the warrant, and that the sum of $31,250 be transferred from free cash for this purpose, including all expenses incidental and related thereto.
Been moved and seconded.
Just briefly, in addition to the summary on page 20, approval by you of this article will replenish funds that are being used now to modify the yellow flashing signals at the entrance to the fire station so that they shut down when not needed. Per Tom Daly, per Mr. Daly, we are comfortable setting an expected completion date by the end of this year. And Tom, you're going to beat this, but just want to keep expectations in check. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Any comments or questions? All those in favor of Article 12, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Article passes unanimously. Article 13.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Article 13, Fund Electronic Voting at Town Meeting. I move this article be accepted and adopted and printed in the warrant, that the sum of $25,000 be transferred from free cash for this purpose.
Been moved and seconded. Any comments or questions on electronic voting? Yes, ma'am.
Marty Verdina, do we spend this $25,000 on every meeting? Is that what it's all about?
It is.
So why do we only use it on 2 or 3 articles? You might get a better picture of how people really feel if they could vote privately.
Well, it's been my experience, ma'am, that to keep town meeting moving more quickly, and if there are no significant questions about an article, that I prefer to choose to have a voice vote. It's quicker, and it's my job to run town meeting, and I think the quicker the meeting, the better off everybody is. Yes, sir.
Steve Gass, Gibson Road. We voted e-voting, I don't know, a couple of years ago, right? So why do we have to vote on it every year to refund it? I think the intent was a while back, we try it, it works. So can it just be put into the budget so it doesn't come up as an article on the warrant in the future?
That has been discussed, and we'll consider it. Thank you.
Mr. Fallender. Please go to the mic.
I think they're great. Why don't we buy them?
Well, I think the problem with that, lies with the training and the expertise to set everything up each time it's done. If we did that, I think the expenditure would be greater, but I think that's a valid question, and perhaps the select board should consider it.
Thank you.
Yes, budget time is beginning in a matter of days. Thank you.
Any other questions on our, yes, ma'am.
Hi, Joan Franklini, Barney Way. You just said you want the meeting to go faster. If we remove this from the meeting, every year the meeting will go faster. Thank you.
I think we're ready to vote. All those in favor of Article 13, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Passes unanimously. Article 14. Mr. Matheson, you're back.
I'm back. More fun. Okay, Article 14, fund the new parking program at Rock Harbor and adopt new non-resident fee. That's not what we're doing. So just so everyone knows and is clear, before I read my motion, I want people to know and understand. This is kind of a confluence of democracy and God knows what else, coming together when we had public hearings, when we were looking at funding the parking program that is already existing in Orleans, looking at Rock Harbor fees. So it was bureaucracy and democracy coming together, and we ended up with an article that says something but really isn't going to do that. So what's printed in the warrant, forget it. Article 14. I move that this article be accepted and adopted, and that the sum of $32,500 be transferred from free cash for the purpose of implementing a new parking program. However, this motion does not authorize the Select Board to implement the new parking fees at Rock Harbor as set forth in the article printed in the warrant.
It's been moved and seconded.
So as a bit of explanation, we are not putting parking fees at Rock Harbor. But we do need the $32,500 to continue with the parking program that we now have. We have stickers for parking. We used to call them beach stickers, but we have several places in town, including town landings and private roads, that are inundated with illegal parkers in the summertime. We have a program that allows for a summer employee for the police department to go around using technology that can read the license plate numbers of any of those vehicles that are illegally parked, whether it's at a town landing or in your front yard. The vendor that we used this past summer provided us with the software, which works really well. However, translating that information that we take in to the Registry of Motor Vehicles or to our own accounting department just broke down. Sometimes when you take the low bidder, you know what happens. So, to enforce a parking regulation where somebody gets a $50 fine for parking, as I said, illegally, or parking in your front yard, if you can't track them down and collect that money, or if there are no consequences for somebody taking that ticket and just throwing it on the ground and adding littering to their list of offenses and driving away, then it's worthless. So what we have is a system that allows us to go through the Registry of Motor Vehicles so that people can't renew their registrations or their licenses unless they pay their fines to the local city, municipality, whatever, similar to what a lot of the cities and towns do in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. So we are looking for the $32,500 so that we can get a new vendor, one that has been proven successful and one that has shown that they are able to follow through with the registry, with the town accountants and finance people so that we actually get what we're paying for. So that's what the 32.5 is for.
Thank you. So the Select Board voted unanimously in favor of this article, and this evening the FinCom re-voted 1 in favor and 8 opposed. Questions? Yes, sir.
Chris Barry, Rock Harbor Road. So how much money did we actually collect in parking tickets last year?
Mr. Kelly.
So that's part of the problem. We wrote tickets for this past summer close to $16,000 and probably collected a third of that. And one of the reasons we want to change vendors is that follow-up is not being done. They're not mailing out notices for people that have passed the time to pay, and they're not following up with the registry. So the other part of this is we have an annual contract. If we wait until May to fund a new vendor, we will not have a new program in place for next season. So with the startup time necessary, that's the reason why it's being requested to be funded now as opposed to just part of the operating budget for next year. But the goal would be to collect 100% of the tickets that are written, and without a vendor that's going to stand behind their work, we aren't going to get any closer.
So let me just understand this. We have a part-time employee that costs the town money, let's say $10,000, and we're going to spend $32,000 more, so that's $42,000, and we're going to collect $16,000. So how does that work? Is this municipal finance?
Well, no, in all honesty, this has been about public education to preserve the parking lots that are currently restricted to resident only, to give residents first priority. This program is designed to be expanded. We have over 28 town landings. We have congestion at every town landing, multiple town roads. We've just started this brand new parking program. So the goal would be to grow the program and ultimately make it self-sufficient. But the board approved this program 2 years ago with the understanding it was not a break-even program and not a program to make money. It was more about trying to manage the limited parking that we have.
I would vote against this. Thank you.
Yes, sir, and then I'll take you, ma'am.
Paul Cass, Orleans. I'm glad you did away with the fees for Rock Harbor, but is there any reason why you just can't use the resident fee, increase that so you don't have like another department and they can oversee the illegal parking?
I'm not sure I understand your question.
Well, the police department has a summertime officer that travels around. It's not something separate or different. It's just part of what the police department is doing.
Are we going to cross out the word Rock Harbor here? I mean,
we did that in the motion that I read, Mr. Cass.
Okay.
So let me just make one further clarification, because this entity goes back several years and initiated somewhat with our Shellfish and Waterways Advisory Committee, where some of our town landings were being overrun by non-residents, by commercial fishermen here for the commercial bass season, who are parking vehicles, trailers, all over the town roads, getting to certain landings. We have other places where people don't want to pay to go to the beach, so they're going down small, narrow roads that go to the water where there is a town landing. Town landings are here for access to the water for our residents and our fishermen and our commercial fishermen, kayakers and whatnot. And as I said, several years ago, our Shellfish and Waterways Advisory Committee recognized the fact that citizens of this town, taxpayers of this town, were unable to get to the water. because all the parking, legal and illegal, was being taken up by out-of-towners just looking to get to the beach for free. So we've instituted small areas over the last few years where we have a resident-only parking situation. So as was previously stated, this is not meant to be a moneymaker. We're not trying to raise money for the town to pay bills somewhere else. What we're trying to do is have an enforceable parking program that guarantees the residents and taxpayers of this town can get to the water, get to the landings that our taxes pay to maintain, and that they don't get overrun by visitors just looking for a free ride to go to the beach. So it's a work in progress. It's a system that we think is going to be effective, that's proven to be effective in other towns, and that's why we are looking to continue with this program.
Yes, ma'am.
Barb Ankerson, Anchor Drive in Orleans. Unless I'm really not understanding, I don't see how you can take Article 14 and decide you're going to make another article out of it. I mean, this is all Rock Harbor, all through this article. What's to say we're going to say, oh, this all sounds like a good idea, what you're telling us? And then all of a sudden, someday, there's going to be parking fees for Rock Harbor.
Okay, so there, as I said, the article that was printed in the warrant that alluded to all these things above and beyond the 32.5 was not, it was not what I read and proposed as the motion for tonight's town meeting. So
But what you have in here is something that people have been reading about and are expecting to vote on, not to come in and have a whole different article thrown at us that has nothing to do with this article. And I would ask that it be cast out, whatever it is you're doing. And I think this needs to be voted on.
So the original article that was printed in the warrant had two parts. One was the $32,500 for the parking fee. The other was to create fees for Rock Harbor. We are not asking to create any fees for Rock Harbor. We're only asking for the $32,500 for the parking program.
Mr. Long.
Thank you very much. Doug Long, Pine Ridge Lane. If we vote yes on this article as printed in the warrant, we're saying yes to the non-resident parking fee, no matter where it is,
No,
but Rock Harbor.
we're not voting on what was printed in the warrant. We're voting on what I read.
Well, that's weird. I mean,
as I said, there were two parts. There were two parts to the article in the warrant.
But we need to see something in writing, don't we?
Yep. Well,
so maybe we need to ditch this article.
So, you know, I understand your sentiments, sir, but I think, you know, the explanation that I gave earlier, that our mission really is to preserve the opportunity for the residents and taxpayers of the town of Orleans to get to the water. And right now, we have that ability disrupted and threatened because many, many, many people are coming here and looking for a free ride, and they're parking on the street, they're parking in people's driveways, they're parking on people's front lawns to go to the beach for free. So if we don't pass this article, then they will go right back to doing that with impunity next summer.
So well, this is really strange, because if we somehow magically dismiss what the article is printed, and instead we vote on something we heard.
I understand your confusion, Mr. Long, but that's not what Mr. Matheson presented.
It doesn't sound legal. All right, I've said enough. Thank you very much. Appreciate the time.
Yes, sir.
I think what you have outlined, Rick vote, Rock Harbor Road. I think the way you had said and the way you've outlined it sounds great, but that's not what's written in here. It doesn't read to me like there's two parts and we're just ditching one. I think it would make a lot more sense to ditch this, go back, rewrite something else. I'm happy to vote on it in December, but this is just really confusing.
Thank you. We understand that you're passionate about this, but if we can just get to the crux of the issue. Yes, sir?
You just mentioned the Dennis Murphy, Windy Hill Road. So you just mentioned that people are, with impunity, we're going to stop this. They're getting away with. But you spent money last summer, and by your own description of what happened, how many of those people actually paid the piper, so to speak? Not many, as you described. It's true.
Because the vendor that we chose
I understand
was
that.
unable to follow
Totally
through on their
understand
commitment.
that. I get that. On top of that, though, if you're doing it that way, instead of doing it that way, why wouldn't you just go to the local auto people around here that have tow trucks and let them make some money and tow them? And then we don't pay anything and we don't lose money. Actually, you get a cut of it somehow and you make money. How come that wasn't thought of?
I think we have your point, sir.
That's for my question. Was it looked into, or why wouldn't it be looked into?
So we have, utilizing the chief of police and a parking study committee, the town attorney, we've looked at all of these options. The town is limited on what it can do in certain areas with parking.
What do you mean by that?
Towing randomly is not one of the options that we have available to us.
Well, it's not random, though, is it? I mean, that's...
Things would need to be, roads would need to be posted permanently, no parking. There would have to be signs, and you've seen them when we have 4th of July parade or fireworks at Rock Harbor, where the police department has to go and post signs that are permanently on the side of the road all summer long. There are a lot of things that we could do that would be burdensome, unsightly, unwelcoming, and we have chosen not to go down that road.
Okay, but if...
So before I answer any more questions, the select board has asked Mike Ford to speak to the legality of the change. So let's hear the legality of it, and then we can get back to the motion itself.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. So at town meeting, we have a warrant, and the warrant apprises you of the subject matters that will be considered for your consideration at town meeting. The warrant is not supposed to be an accurate forecast of everything that's going to happen, but the subject matter of those things that may be voted on. So what do you vote on? You vote on motions, not on articles. So when he takes a tally, it's on the motion that was read by the speaker, not the article that's printed in the warrant. The motion in this particular case has been made by Mr. Matheson is different than the article in the proposed motion. As long as it's within the scope of the article, and there was a notice that there'd be a parking program for $32,500, then it's in order before you to consider it. You can vote it up or down as you see fit. But the motion is that the article be accepted and adopted, the $32,500 for the parking program be appropriated. It deletes the reference to Rock Harbor, and then the motion goes on to say that it does not authorize the selectmen, this is the motion, to implement the new parking fees at Rock Harbor as set forth in the article. That's what you're voting on. You don't vote on articles when you come to a town meeting. There to give you a warning of what may be considered. You vote on motions. And the rule on motions is they can be voted on if they're within the scope of the article. So it's proper. If you feel that it's too close a call or you have any reason to vote against it, you obviously can vote against it. But I just want to alert people that You don't vote on the articles when you come here. The articles are a warning of what may be considered. You vote on the motions. It's important to listen to the motions, and that's why Mr. Matheson specifically pointed out when he got up here that the motion he was making was different than the article and different than the proposed motion in your warrant. If we couldn't do that, then we could never change anything on town meeting floor, and you as a legislative body have a right to make those changes as long as they're within the scope.
I'll take the next person in line. No, you've already had your opportunity.
Well, I know I haven't actually. I haven't finished because of...
Please.
Okay, thank you. So I guess my next point then is, how long will this continue? Because it was mentioned that it's been a lost leader. How long will we continue to lose money on this program as you want to run it?
Kathy Doan, our finance director, will answer your question.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you, Mr. Moderator. Just a point of clarification. First of all, we don't know we're losing money because we don't know what's out there as a receivable. I have no idea, based on the current vendor's program, what is actually owed to the town. So I can't even answer that question. That's the problem. So what this, I just want to clear up something that may be confusing to the audience. When the words parking program keep coming up, what the 32.5 is actually for is a system to automate your enforcement operation of already parking restrictions that have already been implemented in town. This is just the software system that allows us to enforce it, record our receivable, know what we have outstanding, so we can see if this is something we want to continue in the future. But we don't have the information with which to do our job with the current software application that we currently use.
I get that.
So
what are we doing then? What are we doing then to go to the vendor to get the money back, right? If he's failed to deliver on the service he provided, how are we going after that money?
Sir, I want to move on. We have several other people that would like to speak to this article. Yes, sir.
Jonathan White from 3 Twitchnot Farm Way. First of all, I think those are very commendable goals you're striving for. I think, personally, I'd like to see this in writing. I think it's enough of an amendment that there ought to be a formal request to amend this article. But if not, I'll be honest, I was half paying attention, sir, when you read it. So if we're going to vote on it tonight, if you could read it for us one more time, it'd be very helpful. Thank you.
Would you mind reading it again, Mark?
Certainly. I move that Article 14, fund new parking program at Rock Harbor and adopt new non-resident fee, which was the original title of the article. I move that this article be accepted and adopted and that the sum of $32,500 be transferred from free cash for the purpose of implementing a new parking program. However, this motion does not authorize the Select Board to implement the new parking fees at Rock Harbor as set forth in the article.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Thank you. That was my motion. That's what was seconded.
Thank you, moderator. Luke Chapman, South Orleans Road. So what I'm hearing a lot of people convey is they don't want to pay out of like tax-funded dollars to enforce parking. They don't want a losing program. And it seems like there's a program to register parking or for parking registration that's funded. And it would seem that that funded program could go towards enforcing parking registration like in Rock Harbor or other places. So maybe rather than have a separate program, we use the funding from the beach sticker program or otherwise to fund the enforcement of beach parking.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Bob Rothberg. Blake Lane. I had trouble following the presentation. There was a lot of talk about the people who are going in as free riders, taking advantage of this and not paying anything. And I see that it was proposed that they pay $15. And you can argue whether $15 is the right amount. But it's hard to say, well, we don't want free riders. We're not going to let them pay. We're just going to kick them out. And I go back, and I look back a couple of articles, and we're trying to figure out the economic value of Rock Harbor. Now, I know that the Orleans the Orleans Historic Society has a lifeboat there, life-saving boat, that people go to see. Are we going to say, well, people who aren't residents shouldn't go there?
So we're not charging anything for Rock Harbor. We're not proposing to charge anything for Rock Harbor. We're not changing anything at Rock Harbor as it stands and has stood.
Will we be ticketing people?
No. No.
Then I'll go sit down.
Yes, sir?
John Carver at Mayo Way. Just more of a point of order. Do we need to vote on the amended article before we even vote on whether we're going to accept it or not? I haven't heard that yet, so I'm a little confused.
We're voting on the motion that Mr. Matheson read into the record this evening.
So that's all. At this point, that's all we're going to vote on is
Yes.
whether we accept.
Just that.
And I think that's part of the confusion that people have is we're not voting on the amendment yet. We're voting on the amendment to the article. No.
No,
Okay.
there is
Okay.
the article.
Yeah. So I'm confused, and I think some other people might be as well. Thank you.
We're voting on the motion that Mark made, which was a rewritten Article 14, which he read into the record.
Simply to pay for our parking program, no fees to be charged at Rock Harbor.
Yes, sir.
John Ingwerson, 16 Anchor Drive in Orleans. And I think there's so much confusion about this because even if you restated it, it still has the same heading of Rock Harbor. So I move that this article be rewritten, leaving out the Rock Harbor parking lot and bring it back at a later date. And I have that in writing.
Mr. Ingerson, is this an indefinite postponement? Is that what you're proposing? This evening? No. So I think that should come in as an indefinite postponement. Is that correct, Mike? Yeah. So would you like to go back and make that motion? Yes. Well, please do.
John Ingwerson, Anchor Drive in Orleans, and I make the motion that this article be indefinitely postponed.
Do I have a second? It's been moved and seconded. This is debatable. Does anybody have any comments on the motion to indefinitely postpone?
Gail
Gail.
Myers-Lavin, Orleans. I would be against the indefinite postponement for the reasons that actually have been stated, but I think there's still confusion about what is being proposed, and perhaps it would help people think of it if you stated that it was a substitute motion. We are actually having others in the town meeting tonight that are similar, and rather than indefinitely postpone this and then not be able to spend the money to get it working by next summer, we shouldn't indefinitely postpone it. But I think people might understand better if the piece that's being read out is about the parking program and is about the $32,000, but doesn't have to have that sentence with Rock Harbor in it. It is only what Mr. Matheson is speaking to. Thank you.
Thank you. So any other comments on the indefinite postponement? Yes, ma'am. And then
Debbie Winnick, Windy Hill. I support exactly what that previous speaker said, and I would oppose the indefinite postponement. I believe what we need to hear is that this is a substitute main motion. And had we heard that at the beginning, I think maybe we would have understood where we were and where we're going. If you agree. Thank you.
Can I make one comment?
Andrea Reed?
I just want to explain the difference between what was printed in the warrant and why it's different tonight. The warrant went out and was printed before we had the public hearing on the parking. The parking had two parts. The vendor who was not successful and covers all parking programs and all ticketing and all information in town, and the Rock Harbor parking fees. At the end of our public hearing last Wednesday, your local government is listening and responding. And so, town meeting, we are the legislative body here. We are listening and responding. Our warrants are a map only. What we're being asked to vote on is the motions that we're reading to you or that are coming from the floor. I just wanted you to understand the timeline of why it's different in the warrant, because public hearings impact what we vote on. And that's critical. We are a democracy. We listen and respond, and we go nowhere unless there's a majority. So please, the reason we're coming at you now with this part of the article is because we need the vendor to be responsive and accurate so that we can keep all parking open for residents. It is not a moneymaker for the town. It is a service to protect our capacity as residents to get to every body of water.
So is it safe to say that you're against the indefinite postponement? That's what's on the floor right now.
I just wanted to speak to why we're in this position.
Mr. Wilkinson.
Mr. Moderator, Bob Wilkinson, 20 Pershing Lane. I'm not confused at all. Mark's made it very clear that the Board of Selectmen has abandoned the idea of charging parking at Rock Harbor, which I think is a good decision by the board. But on the other hand, we do have a parking program for the entire town. Now, if you have the misfortune of living in my part of town, which means that you have to turn off Monument Road and go down Herringbrook Road to get Mayflower Point, you'll notice that there's a real small parking lot for a very popular beach at Crystal Lake on Monument Road, and people park all over the place. It's just bizarre. And I drive home some days after work, and I have to pass cars that are parked on one lane, so I'm going on a blind corner, hoping some landscaping truck isn't coming, roaring the other way. We have a real parking problem in this town, and what we're being asked to vote on tonight is basically an enforcement of our existing parking. It has nothing to do with Rock
Harbor. But to get to the motion on the floor, Mr. Wilkinson, are you against the indefinite?
I am very much against indefinite postponement. Thank you.
Any more questions on the indefinite postponement? Oh, yes, ma'am.
I'd like to call the question, please.
No, I'm not so sure we can do that. I think that to postpone indefinitely is non-amendable. Is that correct, Mike?
You can take and move the question.
I can move the question. Oh, okay. There's a motion on the floor to move the question. It's been moved and seconded. This is non-debatable, and I'm going to use the clickers. Please get your clickers. All those in favor of calling the question, please respond. Please press 1. All those opposed, press 2. This is to call the question. No. No, this is to call the question, so we go back to the original article to vote on it. No?
No, for indefinite postponement.
Oh, call the question on the indefinite postponement. Forgive me. We're getting there. So, Mr. Cass? Okay, 351 in favor of calling the question, 54 opposed. So All those in favor of the indefinite postponement, please, and I'm going to use the clicker here again. All those in favor of the indefinite postponement, please press 1. All opposed, press 2. When the green light comes on. So the vote to postpone indefinitely fails, 154 for, 271 against. So now we are back to the main motion on the floor. I think that both Mark, excuse me, if you want to get up to a mic, I'll take your question. I think both Mark and Andrea have addressed this quite well. I think people understand. Would you like to speak again? Or would you like to speak to the motion?
Please. Nathan Sears, 82 Tonsett Road, Natural Resource Manager, Harbor Master. We have a successful parking enforcement program in place for the last 3 or 4 years. This is all about, primarily, in the beginning, access to our shorelines that are overburdened. The tickets that we're writing right now have no teeth. They're not worth the paper they're written on, okay? Once the public catches on to that, we might as well not even enforce parking at that point. This gives us the ability to take these tickets to the registry of motor vehicles. Therefore, the people are forced to pay or they're not able to register their vehicle. It's not just about specific neighborhoods. This is about commercial fishermen who can no longer land their catch at these landings. This is about the residents that want to launch their kayaks. We have such limited access to the shoreline here. We're targeting specific spots that are overburdened successfully. This is the next piece to that. If the tickets aren't worth the paper they're written on, why bother? Thanks.
Yes, ma'am.
You go, no, go first.
I guess it's just still, sorry, Ellen Ortolani, Anchor Drive. The town finance manager put it the most clearly to me when she said this is about choosing a new vendor to enforce a program that we already have. And yet still the way this has been stated in the revised writing is that you're saying something about creating a new program. So that's where I'm finding an issue. I'm at issue with the language that's being used. I have no problem, and I don't even understand why we have to be asked for you all to find a better vendor. I mean, do you know how much more it's going to cost?
I think the new program refers to the new vendor.
Well, maybe that's clear to some of you, but it's not clear to me. And again, I don't understand why why you need permission to find a better vendor, and don't we need to know how much that's going to cost before we vote on it? Do you know it's going to cost $32,500 more?
Yes.
Okay, so then great. If that's all it is finding a new vendor and it's going to cost, but I still just think that it's poorly written and it's caused an incredible amount of confusion.
Yes, sir.
Bill Stockert, 43 Pochert Road. Call the question, please.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to call the question. Requires a 2/3 majority. I'm going to have you use your clickers again. All those in favor of calling the question, press 1. Opposed, press 2. The vote passes 413 to 24. So we're on to the main motion which only requires a simple majority, but again, I'm going to use the clickers on this. All those in favor of Article 14, press 1. All those opposed, press 2. Article passes by the simple majority, 304 people in favor, 130 opposed. So, Mark has really picked the short straw this evening with articles before the town meeting. Article 15.
Article 15, fund the former Governor Prince property maintenance and insurance. I move that this article be accepted and adopted as printed in the warrant, and that the sum of $75,000 be transferred from free cash for this purpose.
Been moved and seconded. Any questions? Yes, sir.
Richard Wilbur, Packet Landing, Orleans. One small point to start with. As an ancient English major, I object to the term free cash. I mean, come on. It sounds like it fell out of the sky or it washed up on the beach. Can't we call it surplus funds, unexpected or unexpended revenue? It's a small point, but it bothers me.
Thank you for your comment.
Secondly, I mean to vote yes on this question, but it raises a serious question about what are we doing with this money pit? Nothing seems to be happening. We look at the underground mall developer who came in, and in the space of a year came up with a perfectly acceptable plan to redevelop that property into much needed affordable housing. With Governor Prince, it's, $100,000 to study this, $75,000 to insure it, money for Public Works to go and board it up when it's been broken into and vandalized. This may not be the time or the place to raise the question, but shouldn't we be thinking about putting together an appropriate deed with the right restrictions and conditions, market this thing to somebody who can develop it and get it done, rather than have the taxpayers keep carrying this white elephant forever? Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate your remarks, and I'd just like to comment that, number one, the underground mall is a private developer, and I don't think that the apartments there are going to be affordable. We've seen what happens when developers try to build things that are affordable and attainable for the working people in this town. Cove Road was an example of that, and we ended up with $800,000 condos that nobody that's a working person in this town could afford to buy. Governor Prince, Wednesday night, the report of the Governor Prince Committee will be delivered to the Select Board. The consultant that's been working on it, the proposals to go forward with truly affordable housing to be developed on that site that the town owns will be presented to the town Wednesday night. One of the issues that we have dealt with over the years in this town with the housing crisis that we have is that whenever the town gets involved to secure property to make sure that it's developed in ways that work out best for the town, it requires a long time. It requires 5 to 7 years sometimes to bring forward a housing project. We're looking at the Cape Cod 5 building at Skakit Corners and going through that process. We've been going through that process now for 3 years, and it's going to be a couple more years, but ultimately housing will be built there. We're looking at 107 Main Street It's been 2 years or 3 years that the town has owned that property. Hopefully, groundbreaking will take place this spring as state funding and grants have come forward now. But again, if the town wants to buy the property so that a developer doesn't come in and build more million-dollar condos, and the town's goal is to provide housing for the working people, the kids that grew up here that want to stay here, unfortunately, the restrictions that we have take time. So the $75,000 that we're asking for tonight, yes, it's going to pay for liability insurance on the Governor Prince. It's going to pay to board it up so that it doesn't get vandalized or you don't have people, homeless people living there. But it's the price we pay for having a piece of property that we want to develop into housing for the working people of this town, the kids that grew up here. It takes time, and that's what we're looking to do here tonight.
Thank you, Mark. Yes, sir.
David Burnham, Anchor Drive. It seems to me we'd be better off spending the $75,000 on the starting of the demolition rather than paying for keeping a crappy piece of real estate going. We're going to take 5 years. How much will the demolition cost? A few bulldozers could probably take care of it in a pretty short time. This doesn't make sense to me to insure something that's going to be demolished eventually. Why not demolish it now?
Unfortunately, that can't happen, sir. There is, the questions of materials in the building that are toxic. We have an engineering firm that's done a study for us that has a demolition plan. You're looking at $1.5 million potentially to demolish the building and get rid of the caustic materials. So that's something that needs to be talked about in the future, whether the developer of the property ultimately bears that burden or whether the town of Orleans bears that burden. As I said, you're looking at $1.5 million minimum to do that job. We're not talking about that tonight. We're talking about $75,000 to insure and secure the building until we do start to move on it.
Any other questions? All those in favor? No, just a minute, please. Do you have a question, Mr. Cass?
Yes, Paul Cass, Orleans. Just mentioned asbestos. Asbestos, if you're going to demo a building, it costs a lot of money. I just hope that in the future, any new project, if zoned properly, would have a certain percentage of low-cost homes. Or, I went to a seminar about low-cost housing, and there's about 10 million questions. We got to do things right. Now, the Underground Mall didn't have low-cost housing, but as a town, I think we need it. That's all.
Thank you, Mr. Cass. I think we're ready to vote. All those in favor of Article 15, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Article passes by the simple majority vote required. Article 16.
Article 16, to fund the Town Cove bulkhead final design and permitting. I move that this article be accepted and adopted as printed in the warrant, and that the sum of $38,000 be transferred from the Waterways Improvement and Maintenance Fund for this purpose, and for the cost incidental and related thereto.
Been moved and seconded. Any comments or questions? All those in favor of Article 16, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Article passes unanimously. Article 17.
To fund the water treatment plant lagoon upgrade replacement project, I move that this article be accepted and adopted as printed in the warrant, and that the sum of $1,900,000 be appropriated for this purpose and for costs incidental and related thereto, and that the treasurer, with the approval of the select board, is authorized to borrow the sum of $1,900,000 pursuant to Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 44, Section 8, subsection 5, or any other enabling authority, and to issue bonds or notes of the town thereof.
Been moved and seconded. Questions? Yes, ma'am. Mrs. Amaru.
Thank you, Mr. Little. Mr. Moderator. Hello, Joanne Amaru, Orleans. Come on, guys, we can do this tonight. It says, unless I'm reading it wrong, $2,250,000.
We actually got bids that came in under the original estimate that we had been given. So we're only asking for the $1.9 million.
This requires a 2/3 majority vote.
But don't forget, we're voting on what I read tonight, not on what was in the warrant. We're not going to give you $2.2 million.
Thank you, Thank you, Mark. All those in favor of Article 17, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed. Article passes unanimously. Article 18.
Article 18, to amend the general bylaw, Chapter 40, Personnel Classification and Compensation Plans. I move this article be accepted and adopted as printed in the warrant.
Been moved and seconded. Comments or questions? All those in favor of Article 18, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed. Passes unanimously. Article 20.
Article 20, Veterans Memorial Park at Academy Place, authorize taking by eminent domain to clear the title. I move that this article be accepted and adopted as printed in the warrant.
Been moved and seconded. Comments or questions? This requires a 2/3 vote as well. All those in favor of Article 20, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed. Article passes unanimously.
Been a pleasure.
We are now going on to the community charter amendments or articles. Pat Fallender from the Community Review, the Charter Review Committee is here to take over.
Well, I don't know about take over, but.
Article 21.
Article 21, amend Home Rule Charter, form of government, purpose, and effective date. I move that this article be accepted and adopted as printed in the warrant.
Been moved and seconded. Comments or questions? All those in favor of Article 21, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed. Article passes unanimously. Article 22.
Article 22, amend Home Rule Charter, specific provisions to prevail. I move that this article be accepted and adopted as printed in the warrant.
Been moved and seconded. Comments or questions? All those in favor of Article 22, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? So the article passes by the necessary 2/3 majority. Article 23.
Article 23, amend Home Rule Charter Code of Conduct. I move that this article be accepted and adopted as printed in the warrant.
Been moved and seconded. Comments or questions? Yes, sir.
Andrew Meow, Defiance Lane. Why do we need this? Okay. Why do we need this? Isn't it obvious that people on these boards should have a code of conduct and cooperate and work together? Do we have to legislate that? I think it's totally unnecessary. I vote a resounding no.
I'm gonna let
the better Kanaga?
the senior Kanaga speak on behalf of the Finance Committee, and then I'll let the junior Kanaga take.
Wow.
Oh, that's going to be a subject at Thanksgiving. This article proposes a town charter provision which would place restrictions on free expression, and not just on committee members or town representatives, but it proposes to have this code apply to citizens of the town. And for that reason, the Finance Committee voted against it, as you see in the warrant. It's both unconstitutional and unnecessary. As most of you are probably aware, we have a First Amendment to the Constitution, which guarantees freedom of religion, freedom of speech, freedom of the press, and the right to peaceably assemble and redress your grievances with the government. Now, these are all very important freedoms, and this article proposes to restrict that and to censor expression before it even occurs, which is patently unconstitutional and therefore illegal. And for that reason, it invites litigation. Apart from being unconstitutional, it's also just unnecessary. It's unnecessary because we have federal and state statutes that govern behavior and impose consequences, and we have trained officers of the law to enforce those rules, so we don't need more. It's unnecessary because board chairs already have the ability to control their meetings, to find that people are out of order or if they're being disruptive, to have them removed. Finally, it's unnecessary because town boards that want a code of conduct or desire that have already passed their own, like the Finance Committee. And that is an agreement among the board members to act in a way which is cordial and kind to all those attending, each other as well as the people attending. But that is a world away from restricting the expression of the citizens of Orleans. So for that reason, I'm going to say we don't need a prior restraint on free expression of the citizens of Orleans, and I'm going to ask you to roundly reject this proposal.
Gail Myers-Lavin would like to speak. She's also on the Charter Committee.
Thank you. Some pieces of information. Sorry, let me take this off. It's a topic now at the forefront of both the Commonwealth and the Mass Municipal Association advisories, seminars, best practices, and templates. All it does is propose that the Select Board develop a code of conduct policy, a set of guidelines for civil and respectful actions during public discourse. It's not such a huge deal. We already are subject to the State Ethics Commission regulations, the open meeting law guidelines, as well as the laws of the Commonwealth and the policies and bylaws defined by our town charter. It differs from a code of ethics in that a code of ethics is a set of principles which affect someone's decision-making, whereas this code of conduct would encourage people to be civil and be respectful. That's all. It should be like motherhood and apple pie. I'm kind of stunned by all of the reasons against, but that's my personal view.
Thank you.
Just said slightly.
Mr. Kanega.
Yeah, John Kanega, South Orleans. That's my father, not my brother, just in case anybody was wondering. Just to tag on, I think it is a big deal because political speech is what we have. It's what we're doing. You can't regulate it under any type of bylaws. Dad takes a quote from the Big Lebowski. It's the Supreme Court has roundly rejected prior restraint. You can't do it. So don't stop with these codes of conduct.
Yes, ma'am.
Danielle Bushnell, Defiance Lane.
I teach American history and I teach American government. My current students and my former students are in this room right now because they've been taught to read the Constitution themselves, word for word. It is a big deal. Don't limit their speech. Don't give them the idea that their thoughts don't matter or that they have no say or that they might be shut down. We need more than ever for the youth of America to know this and exercise it. Thank you.
Donnelly
Yes, ma'am.
Larson, 10 Academy Place. While I'm not against the idea of a code of conduct in theory, the fact that there is no baseline of what would be in it is what makes me somewhat hesitant. Because I agree that codes of conduct are not inherently bad and sometimes necessary, but not knowing what's on there, along with the already seeming resistance against the select committee, is what gives me any hesitance.
Thank you. Any other?
Can I just say one thing?
Yes.
As far as the code of conduct is concerned, it would be a policy by the select board. They would have to have public hearings in order to adopt such policies, and that would be your time to decide whether you thought their policies were what you wanted to have. I just wanted to make sure that this is not something that that they would be putting together without your input.
Mr. Haig.
Peter Haig, Anchor Drive. To coin a phrase from a movie, who's going to be the monitors and who's going to monitor the monitors of this policy? I don't think it's enforceable. I don't think it's necessary. And as from what we've heard, it's unconstitutional.
Yes, ma'am.
Rebecca Crandall, Zion's Way. I oppose this because I really think that in a free society, civil behavior is already expected, and we expect it of each other in a free society.
Yes, sir.
Roger McDaniel, Jackknife Point Road. I assume that the Charter Commission was very thoughtful in this, but I'd like to hear what the problem is that this is designed to address. I don't think I've heard that. Second, can the select board adopt a code of conduct, a carefully drafted, carefully thought out code of conduct, if that's a wise thing to do without this? Is this needed if a code of conduct should become desirable and desired?
So I guess there are two questions. Why? And then, is it needed?
What's the problem this is designed to address? The second question is this provision necessary if it should be desirable for the select board to adopt a code of conduct?
I believe that the select board could adopt a code of conduct if they chose to without this. But I also know that in looking at codes of conduct in other towns, in our research, we realized that there is a place for this in order to make sure that people are operating in a civil and cooperative manner. And that's why we wanted to do that. And I understand that most of the time, when we are all working together, we are all very civil, but that doesn't mean that that can be forever. And that was one of the reasons for putting this in here.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Moderator, this is Len Short, Orleans. I move the question.
It's been moved and seconded. This requires a 2/3 majority. I'll try a voice vote. All those in favor of moving the question, please respond by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? It passes unanimously. Okay, on to the question, which also requires a 2/3 vote. All those in favor of Article 23, please respond by saying aye. All opposed? Article fails by the two-thirds vote required. Or it doesn't pass by the two-thirds vote
Yeah.
required.
That's fine.
Article 24.
Article 24, amend Home Rule Charter Emergency Plan. I move that this article be accepted and adopted as printed in the warrant.
Been moved and seconded. Comments or questions on Article 24? Seeing none, all those in favor, excuse me? Yes, sir.
Sorry, I'm another Kanaga.
Another Kanaga.
21 Anchor Drive, Clint. That's my brother and my nephew. I'm against actually all this discussion of home rule charter changes at a special town meeting in the fall. I don't understand why these don't come up at Springtown meeting when the majority of people are here. This meeting was supposed to be for emergency measures, special town meeting, not the town meeting. So I'm against it, and I will vote against all of them if necessary, and I'd encourage other people to do the same, because I don't think we should be discussing these at the special town meeting.
Any other comments regarding
Article
24? Again, it requires a two-thirds majority. I'm going to try a voice vote. All those in favor of Article 24, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? No. I don't think, I'm going to have to ask you to take out your clickers. We're going to redo that. All those in favor of Article 24, press 1. All those opposed, press 2, please. Article fails to gain the two-thirds vote required. 203 in favor, 197 opposed. Article 25.
Article 25, I move that this article be accepted and adopted as printed in the warrant.
Do I have a second? Moved and seconded. Any comments?
No.
Any comments or questions? All those in favor of Article 25, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? No. We're going to have to go to the, I think I'll just use the clickers for the rest of these home charter articles. Please take out your clickers. All those in favor of Article 25, press 1. All opposed, press 2. Article failed to gain the two-thirds majority. 224 yes, 177 no. Article fails. Article 26.
Article 26, amend Home Rule Charter responsibility for appointments. I move this article be indefinitely postponed due to the fact that we are in a transition period now for finding a new town manager.
It's been moved and seconded to indefinitely postpone Article 26. This requires a simple majority vote. All those in favor, please respond by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Article passes by the simple majority required. Article 27. And the motion to indefinitely postpone passed?
Okay, Article 27, amend Home Rule Charter, moderator may designate. I move that this article be accepted and adopted as printed in the warrant.
Been moved and seconded.
I'd like to make a comment on this.
Sure.
There is a part of the charter that talks about the possibility of having a suspension or removal of a town manager, and the person who was supposed to be in charge of that hearing is the moderator. We felt that it was important to designate, to add that the town moderator could, in that situation, depending upon the relationship between the moderator and the town manager or other members of the community, that might want to designate a professional neutral hearing officer to perform this duty. We felt that this was an important addition as an option for the moderator in this situation. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Caroline Kennedy, 96 Tonsett Road. I was on the previous similar committee to this one, and I think what you are reading are minor grammatical changes. You're not making major changes in this set of bylaws. They're align various parts of it to make sure that they're consistent, and so I really believe that you are not out of line and making votes now to make these things consistent and operate properly. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions on Article 27? All those in favor of Article 27, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Well, I'm going to go to the clicker, sorry. All those in favor of Article 27, please press 1. All opposed, press 2. Article passes by the 2/3 required, 273 in favor, 125 opposed. Article 28.
Article 28, amend Home Rule Charter, title change and swearing in of elected officers. I move this article be accepted and adopted as printed in the warrant. This is just moving some parts of the charter around to make it clearer and making sure that any person who is elected is duly sworn in.
Did I hear a second? Been moved and seconded. Any comments or questions? All those in favor of Article 28, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Article passes by the 2/3 majority. Article 29.
Too many papers. Article 29, amend Home Rule Charter cooperation. I move that this article be accepted and adopted as printed in the warrant. And this has to do with the Planning Board working with other, the Board of Health, the Conservation Commission and such. I know everybody works together now in some of these, but we wanted to make the charter consistent so that each of the sections were the same, whether they were in Chapter 9 or Chapter 6.
Been moved and seconded. Comments or questions? All those in favor of Article 29, please say aye. Aye. All opposed? Article passes by the 2/3 vote required. Article 30.
Sorry. Article 30, I move that this, hold on, got to get the right paper. Amend Home Rule Charter Finance Committee. I move this article be accepted and adopted as printed in the warrant.
Been moved and seconded. Comments or questions? All those.
Can I just say, I would just like to say the Finance Committee worked closely with us in reviewing their section of the charter, and we have incorporated their, what they asked us to add to the charter, including having some associate members be added to the Finance Committee so that they have people who can vote in the place of the regular members if they are absent, and also to change the timeline of their fiscal year of when the work that they have to get done seems to go over into the next fiscal year by the 16th. Thank you.
Comments or questions? All those in favor of Article 30, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Article passes by the 2/3 majority. Article 31.
Article 31, amend Home Rule Charter. Oh, the papers are sticking together. Under Planning, I move this article be accepted and adopted as printed in the warrant.
Been moved and seconded. Comments or questions? All those in favor of Article 31, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Article passes by the 2/3 majority required.
I'm done.
Thank you, Pat.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Like, I think this might have been the article that kept everybody here so late this evening. Mr. Herman.
Mr. Moderator. You want to talk about vote?
Article 32.
Authorize special act to prohibit the application of fertilizer. I move that this article be accepted and adopted as printed in the warrant, except that the word certified, wherever it appears in the article before the phrase organic fertilizer, including without limitation in Section 3 of the proposed special act, shall be deleted, and that the Select Board be authorized to approve the final language of this special legislation. And if I may, Ms. Auditor?
Please. Do I have a second?
Yeah.
Thank you. Moved and seconded.
Tonight's vote is another step in a long petition process to protect our waters. It is a statement to the state legislature that Orleans is very serious about clean waters. And fertilizer is a significant negative contributor to its pollution that needs to be addressed. Doing nothing and not trying will change nothing, and our waters will continue to deteriorate. Please move forward with protecting our environment, economy, and community by voting yes on this article.
Thank you. Constance Kramer from the FinCom would like to address the FinCom's vote of 171 on this article.
Good evening. I'm here to share the Finance Committee's opinion on Article 32, Authorized Special Act to Prohibit the Application of Fertilizer. First of all, let me state that all of us on the Finance Committee believe that Orleans water bodies are sacred. We want them to be healthy ecosystems now and in the future. The question for a majority of the Finance Committee members on this article is why ban home organic fertilizer except for growing fruits and vegetables? We have a town bylaw which specifies how fertilizers and pesticides may be used. Has any of that ever been enforced? By whom and at what cost? Has the town government ever been able to appeal to Eversource or to the State Agricultural Resources Commissioner to prohibit the dumping of carcinogens into the town watershed? As noted, our town bylaw, Chapter 103, voted on at town meeting on 5/13/2013 and amended at special town meeting on 10/27/2014, already specifically prohibits the use of pesticides and herbicides on specific sites, including along power lines, with financial penalties. What is the cost to taxpayers for enacting this potential fertilizer ban and its enforcement? According to the University of Massachusetts School of Marine Science Technology, wastewater is found to account for 90%, with road runoff at 8%, as the two largest contributors to our water pollution. Homeowner applications of fertilizer, lawn, or garden account for approximately 2% of the nutrient loading per this study. Healthy lawns maintained properly and naturally with slow release and/or organic materials provide a better growth and barrier, and most importantly, a filter that can stop excess nutrients and heavy metals that are carried within the water volume, which enters our lakes, ponds, bays, and oceans during a heavy rain or snowmelt. This, according to Peter Jensen, Orleans' own agricultural ecologist on Monument Road. For those of us who don't know what that is, ecological agriculture improves pollination, which in turn improves growth. This type of farming and landscaping takes advantage of the natural ecosystem services, such as water filtration, pollination, oxygen production, and disease and pest control. As we know, Cape Cod is inherently different because of our unique sandy soil. For this reason, our Title V leaching fields do not adequately remove the nitrogen and phosphorus, but allow these nutrients to freely flow into our estuaries. We have no built-in barriers outside of the sand and clay deposits unless we grow and maintain healthy and deep-rooted growth that can absorb these nutrients. This ban also begs the question, do we want Orleans to be known as a punitive town with bans to solve a problem, which to the majority of us on the Finance Committee agree sounds like great politics, but not good governance? Or rather be known as a proactive town that is able to guide its homeowners and businesses alike as to what they can do to solve the problem. For example, mitigation of road runoff, enforced regulations on pesticides and herbicide spraying, and managing our existing septic tanks as we await the 7 phases of our wastewater collection system. All of these actions are doable and sustainable for our climate, land, and water bodies. On the other hand, it is the opinion of a minority on the committee who are in agreement with the Association to Preserve Cape Cod that nutrients are bad for our water, fresh and salt, full stop, and that banning fertilizers is one step we can take to improve them. We have choices to make about our landscape and tax dollars, and there is no denying that some green lawns make our ponds green, and we pay to introduce nutrients into our yards and then pay more again to remove them from our waters, this time with our high-cost sewer system. From this perspective, this ban is seen as good for our health, our waterways, and our pocketbooks. In conclusion, the Finance Committee unanimously agrees that historically, our fall town meetings have been held to deal with emergency needs and urgent appropriations, and not brand new articles, like this, Article 19 and Article 14's amendment. They should have been taken up at our annual May town meeting. The additional time between our annual town meetings allows for more thorough discussion, voter education, and hopefully a more fleshed out thought process in its written articles. Thank you.
Mrs. Norgeau.
Gretel Norgeau, Tarkiln Road, longtime organic farmer on the Cape, trying to encourage everybody to use organic compost. I just want to kind of explain the difference between compost and fertilizer. Fertilizer gives your plants kind of a short-term boost, which then needs to be replenished. The process kind of stresses out the plants because they get the food, then they don't, then they get it. You see it in people's lawns when they apply fertilizer and you get green stripes, and the stripes are there for a while and then they fade, and then you give it more fertilizer. Compost feeds the soil, and then the soil feeds the plants, which is more of a natural process and is not a quick release fertilizer. It stays in the soil, feeds the plants over a long term. It also helps during times of drought to retain moisture It helps when we have heavy rainfalls. The mulch and the compost absorb that extra moisture so you don't get runoff. We really don't need fertilizer on our lawns or our plants. What people need to do is learn to change the way that they do things and use more organic compost on their lawns, on their trees, on their shrubs, and yes, on their vegetable gardens too. I am very much in favor of this amendment or article.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Mr. Cass.
Paul Cass, Orleans. I congratulate the town of coming up to date on good use of fertilizers. I've been to many meetings about fertilizer, especially the electric company, who at one of the meetings said that the 29 chemicals they're using on their power lines, they'll look into it, et cetera, but nothing ever happens. Many years ago, when we were talking, the Orleans Pond Coalition had a meeting, asked the scientists about fertilizers. I brought up the question about Phragmites in our wetlands, and the scientists said, oh, they're very good. They help the Phragmites very much. Well, these are the things we're trying to get rid of. But I think, where's Laura Kelly? She's...
We're taking your comments right now. I believe she may be speaking in a while. Thank you.
Okay, she's wise. She's been working the state legislators, town meetings, forever and ever and ever. Listen to her. Thank you.
Ms. Bruce.
Judith Bruce, Tohi Lane. I totally agree with the prior speaker, who is an organic farmer and really knows what she's talking about. As to studies, you can find 50 different studies that will look at what is the nutrient contribution to our waters. Generally speaking, where you see low percentages of fertilizers, it's because they're looking at all of the sources of nutrients, which would be atmospheric deposition, which would be rain and snow that fall from the sky, which are the leaves that fall from trees and wildlife. Generally, when we're looking at remediating waters, we look only at that can be controlled, and that's generally seen as your wastewater or septic effluent, which is generally accepted to be 70–75%, with the balance being fertilizers and stormwater. As to the exact percentage, it is water body specific. Some will be more fertilizers, some will be more stormwater. Fertilizers degrade our waters. All fertilizers degrade our waters, be they chemical, be they organic. Fertilizers do not help the estuaries and ponds of Cape Cod. We can endlessly debate whether the fertilizers are 2%, 5%, 30%. They're bad. If we love our waters, we will approve this prohibition, and I would urge you to please vote yes for this measure.
Thank you. Mr. Smith.
Yeah. Steve Smith, Blueberry Lane. This article falls far short of what the real problem is. In the freshwater lakes and ponds, there are tens of thousands of tons of bad sediment. It's been collected there for 100 years. That is the biggest source, far greater than your lawn fertilizers. You can reduce them on your own. That's fine. But that is where your real problem is. A professor at Wright State University looked at the same issue in Ohio, and he found that there were tons of bad material in the sediment that was dredged in the rivers and parks in Ohio. Compared to the farmland, it far outpaced what was in that area. So this material that's in the bottom, it's blocking off your seepages, your spring holes, All of these things connect up to your saltwater estuaries. Now, in regard to the saltwater estuaries, what you need to understand is that the biggest problem we're seeing now is poor tidal circulation. I don't believe that there's enough lawn fertilizer that you can put around Nauset Estuary and Pleasant Bay Estuary to have any effect on what's occurring by the blockage in these ponds and, both estuaries. I can give you a lot of examples. There isn't enough time. I would encourage you, go on the internet and look up the Wellfleet River Heron Project. It's Wellfleet Truro, either one. There's a lot of resource in there of reports, and it has actually some reports that are quite short. You don't have to read 80 pages. And it brings it right down, and it shows you all the impacts of poor tidal circulation. So take a look at that. Go ahead and reduce your lawn fertilizer if you want. But the biggest problem in our places is in the bottom and in the circulation. Thank you.
Mr. Delaney.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Richard Delaney, Orleans. I, of course, encourage you all to support this article strongly, as I do. I just would point out, if you have any questions, I've never seen an article in all of my years of coming to town meeting that had as much scrutiny and support from our fellow citizens on various boards. If you happen to see this handout that was given out earlier today, 9 of our committees, the Agricultural Committee, the Board of Health, the Water and Sewer Commission, the Conservation Commission, Energy Committee, Marine and Freshwater, right, Orleans Pond Coalition, right down the list. So this article has been looked at by members here in great detail, and all of them enthusiastically support it. So that should answer questions. Second point, Mr. Moderator, we don't need to debate which source of pollution is better or worse than the other. They all need to be addressed. We, as a body, address the big questions with the sewer treatment plant, support in the piping, in the sewering of the town. But then we also have to supplement that with our own individual behavior changes. Giving up a little fertilizer on your lawns collectively, as this would have us do, is a way we as citizens can change our behavior to support what we're doing collectively as a town. So I encourage you all to support it. I will also remind you, a healthy ecosystem is the basis for our productive economy here on Cape Cod. Without clean water, we don't have a healthy economy. Without a healthy economy, we don't have a healthy community. So this is an investment in ourselves as well as our water. And if we pass this tonight, I assure you we will not be seen by our fellow Cape Codders as a punitive town. We'll be seen as a leadership town that is taking a proactive, environmentally responsible actions to protect our best and most important resource. So I urge your support tonight. Thank you.
Mr. Kanaga.
Anchor Drive. I'm a landscape architect. I've been working in the field for over 40 years. I served on the Conservation Commission and I helped write the Orleans Wetland Bylaw. I understand the issues and I agree with the gentleman that talked about sedimentation in our water bodies. The flushing that's needed, if we did some simple dredging in a few locations at the entrances to the outer beach, just took care of the breaks that were there, we'd have a lot better flushing and a lot less nitrification. The Cape Cod Commission did a study and found that nitrogen was contributed in large part by septic systems and road runoff. Only 2% is contributed by lawn fertilizers and plant fertilizers. We're talking 2%. I think this article goes a long way towards abridging people's rights and how they take care of their own property. It's not necessary. The Conservation Commission has the ability to condition, and they already do, the use of fertilizers within 100 feet of any resource area. So I'd encourage you to vote this down and let the town boards that are responsible for those things take care of it.
Yes. Yes, ma'am.
Carol Alper, 116 South Orleans Road. I'm speaking as an individual tonight. I belong to many groups that advocate for a sustainable environment. I'm in favor of clean water, but I am opposed to this article as written. And let me give you some reasons. I'm a master gardener. I've been that for the last 7 years. We talk to people about sound, scientific-based, sound products to use in home environments. People have talked about this being 2%. We're talking about a very small amount, and everybody's talking lawn fertilizer. Lawn fertilizer is the issue, but we're also talking about anybody in this town who uses rose tone on their roses or Neptune Harvest on their, on their flower beds or holly tone or any of those products. They are organic fertilizers, and we're going to put people against each other in this town. It's creating a situation where I think the debate is good. The debate is very healthy. One of the groups I'm in, we advocate for people reducing their lawns, reducing their use of fertilizer. But a prohibition you need to have a pretty high bar when you set a prohibition on people, because people don't like to be dictated to. It's just the nature of people. I think working with people, educating people is important. And I'm going to make 3 other points. One is, in 2014, the state took this right away from the local towns because they didn't feel there was enough expertise at the local level. I'm going to ask you the question, who in this town is going to manage this? We have a select board. Of the 5 people on the select board, 1 is very enthusiastic about this, 1 abstained, and 3 are pretty neutral on the issue. So where are these regulations going to come from? We have regulations that are already on the books. They're not being enforced. So we're asking for additional power from the state when we already have that power in our hands, and we're not using it. And my last point, well, there's another point too. They're not telling us about the cost of policing this if it would go into effect. Tonight, this is being proposed at a special town meeting where it really belongs at the annual town meeting in May. So I'm going to make a motion that this be indefinitely postponed. It's in the wrong place at the wrong time. We shouldn't be voting on this tonight.
So it's been moved, excuse me. It's been moved and seconded to indefinitely postpone. This is debatable. Is there any comments on the motion to indefinitely postpone? On the postponement. Yes, Mr. Amaru.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Madam Chair, Board of Selectmen, committee members, and fellow citizens of the town of Orleans, I happen to be the acting chairman, the chairman of the Shellfish and Waterways Committee that voted in favor of this. And the reason that I believe that we should not postpone is because we've wasted way too much time already on this issue. I've been studying this issue for a long, long time. In 2008, the Blue Book on the Waters of Orleans came out and stated flatly that despite what has been said about these percentages, at that time, 14% of the nitrogen runoff that was accumulating in our estuarine waters and ponds and lakes was from runoff from fertilizers, mostly chemical fertilizers, but they all produce the kinds of elements that we're trying to eliminate. Since that time, the numbers of homes that have been built, the numbers of irrigation systems that have been applied, the thousands of acres of our town that have been inundated by chemical and natural fertilizers has increased dramatically. Facts are difficult things, but this fact is not difficult to perceive. Drive around your town, ladies and gentlemen. Look at the lawns up on the hillsides, especially overlooking the water. What do you see? Now, nothing against the new people that have come into the town in the last 5 years or more, but the amount of energy that's been put on the lawns that finds its way into our waters is causing them to suffer and to die. There are scientists in this room that have for years been studying the bottoms of our ponds and estuaries, and they know that there's zero oxygen remaining on the bottom of most of them. Town Cove, Halls Cove, Mill Pond, Little Mill Pond. These bodies used to produce tremendous amounts of fish and shellfish. They're dead now. I grew up on the Mill Pond, catching flounders, harvesting scallops in the fall. My mother used to say that people don't miss what they never had. And most of you have never had a plate full of your own scallops harvested from the end of your own street. But most of us who are over 70 years old, including me, harvested them back in our day. It was a rite of passage for the fall, preparing for the winter. There's not a living scallop in the bottom of these estuaries any longer, nor are there flounder, eels, anything that lives on the bottom. You might catch an occasional striper or a bluefish near the surface where there is some oxygen, near the shoreline where there still are quahogs. But you get away from the shoreline any distance at all and there's nothing there. I'm going to ask the town to please consider changing your attitudes about what's important. Is it a green neon lawn 8 months out of the year, or is it blue water with fish and shellfish that we can all enjoy because we're going to have access to them? Because we've got intelligent rules and regulations that regulate how we can get to the waters. We talked about that a little while ago. I think it had something to do with $32,500. So I'm passionate about this. I was born in a town that had clean water and rich estuaries. I want to die in one that has clean waters and rich estuaries. Thank you.
Mr. Matheson.
Yeah, I'd like to speak to the motion on indefinite postponement and bring up two things. 1962, a woman named Rachel Carlson wrote a book called Silent Spring. And people didn't want to read it or believe it. And the chemical companies fought against her and put out their propaganda. And it took 10 years before we finally were able to ban DDT on crops in this country, because we finally all realized what was happening to the birds, to the animals, to wildlife because of DDT application. It was postponed for 10 years. 1989, Al Gore started out on a speaking tour, and for about 12 years was on that tour before it became a movie that was called An Inconvenient Truth. People didn't want to listen to what was going on with the impacts on our environment from chemical pollution. And the big chemical companies, the oil industries, the coal industries, all tried to quiet those voices. We all know what the impacts of sea level rise mean to the town of Orleans, or at least we should. We all know what the impacts are of rising water temperatures and rising acidification in our waters. Anybody that's ever gone out shell fishing or fin fishing knows what's happening to our water here on the Cape. How long are we going to ignore it? We want to indefinitely postpone this article tonight and ignore it even longer? We're under a mandate from the federal government to remove 100% of the nitrogen from Meeting House Pond. We spent $60 million on sewering the downtown. We're going to spend another $30+ million to go down Main Street to Meeting House Pond because we have to remove 100% of the nitrogen from Meeting House Pond. You're going to sit here tonight and say, okay, we'll take out 100%, but we'll put in another 2% every year. How much sense does that make? You're going to spend hundreds of millions of dollars to take it out and then put it right back in the ground again to satisfy somebody that wants to have the pretty green lawn. Is that really what we need to have in this town? We can't postpone it anymore. We need to start taking care of our water, and this is one of the places we can do it.
So the motion on the floor, Paul, is to indefinitely postpone. Do you want to speak to that?
Yeah. I went to Vietnam on a victory ship some 40, 50 years ago. And on deck we had 250 barrels of Agent Orange. Terrible. I have nightmares about it. The ship also had a lot of asbestos. I used to work with asbestos, holding my breath, mixing this fly dust with water, and when I ran out of bed, I went back and forth because I knew the dangers of it. I joined a ship that was built in Germany that didn't have any asbestos, where it took another 7 years before the United States outlawed it. I lived on the Cove some time ago, well, another 30, 40 years. And in the fall, I used to grab the scallops that were fluttering past me in the water, and I'd scoop it up with my finger and eat it. Delicious. I used to go with my feet with quahogs. You go out where the seagrass was, wiggle around, get a quahog, and that was great. Last time I did that, I couldn't find any seagrass at all on the cove. It's gone. I used to get soft-shell clams by Nauset Inlet. They're gone. It's, you know, this being, you're not outlawing it from the eggways and the true values. People can still get it, but it's like the dump or the recycling center. When they opened that up for recycling, it was years before they recycled anything. They're getting us used to it. This is something we have to start now before it's too late. Thank you.
Mr. Short.
Len Short, Orleans. I don't disagree with the gentleman who talked a while ago about the fact that the sediment is already in our ponds. There's no question about it. But there's no need for us to continue to add to that problem by putting fertilizer on our soil. I was with the Cape Cod Commission and represented this town for a number of years, and we addressed this issue a number of years ago. And one of the recommendations I made to them at that time was that we should educate people here on the Cape, because there was no way that we could police this whole issue. And the agreement was that we would educate the people who were the landscapers and also the people who ran the golf courses. Both of them have organizations. The commission agreed and have never done anything about that. We have to start at some point doing something about keeping these chemicals from going into our ponds and estuaries. I would like to move the question.
You can't move the question after making a comment.
Oh, okay. Then I'll stand back and come up again.
I'm going to take. Yes, sir. Would you like to speak to indefinite?
No, I'm not speaking to this. I'm speaking to this.
Yes, sir.
Name's David Light. I live up on Cedar Lane Road, where I live on a beautiful 1.5 acre property near the top of the hill. And I'm going to charge admission for people to come and see it. It's an agricultural experimental station, about an acre and a half, and for these 40 years that I've been living there, I have never watered it, never seeded it, never raked up the leaves, let all the clippings just lie. And you might want to take a look. 21 Cedar Land Road, see if you like what you see. I haven't heard anybody mention Cape Cod lawns yet, but they're the coming thing, believe me.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Moderator, Bob Wilkinson again. I'd like to speak against the indefinite postponement, primarily because several speakers this evening have mentioned that special town meeting is only for emergency articles. Well, one obvious thing is protecting our waters. Clearly an emergency, at least as far as I'm concerned. But my real point is I've been attending town meetings for about 54 years here on the Cape. And I think if you go back through the record, you'll find we've passed some pretty important articles at special town meeting. And I would also point out, we've been here now for 3 hours. We spent maybe 20 minutes on things we really had to address. So if we followed the council that we should only do important things at the annual meeting, we could count on the annual meeting being approximately 3 hours longer come May. I don't think that's a valid argument. I really don't. I'm against indefinite postponement. Thank you.
Any other questions? Yes, sir. Mr. Long.
Oh, sorry. Doug Long, Pine Ridge Lane. I oppose indefinite postponement. Thank you very much. A lot of people have spoken very passionately tonight, and it's not that often that you get that many people in one room, one time, and have made very strong arguments, I think, in favor of reducing or prohibiting. Tough word. But you know what? You need tough words. You need tough actions from the tough words in order to reverse a 100-year decline in the waters and the shellfish and the finfish of Cape Cod and Cape Cod Bay, surrounding waters. It is a tough word, but this meeting is filled with tough people. And some of them use the figure 2% because they don't like any kind of regulation, they don't like it, and so they use the low number, but other people have a more realistic number, 14%, 15%, something, which of course is less than the big numbers, but it's an important number, and it's something we can actually do ourselves individually. So my point is, let's strike while the iron's hot tonight, and let's vote in favor of this article, and put the bit in our teeth and run with it. Thank you very much.
So we're voting on the indefinite postponement. Are there any more comments or questions on? Yes, ma'am.
Renee Andre, Rock Harbor Road. I am voting in support of postponing the amendment because I feel it's a very important thing that we're voting on, and the whole town should vote on it. It's impeding my right as a property owner to choose how I take care of my property. And I think this is something that the whole town should be able to vote on, because it's your right as a citizen and as a private property owner to decide how you would like to fertilize your property. I'm all for clean water, and I read and I try to do my best, but I don't want it legislated. I don't want some board telling me what I can put on my petunias.
Any other comments on indefinite? Yes, sir.
Robert Edmondson, I'm on Rock Harbor Road. I move the question.
Okay, so it's been moved, so we're going to vote on the indefinite postponement. I'm going to ask you to take out your clickers. This requires a simple majority. Oh, no, move to terminate debate. This requires it's been moved, requires a 2/3 majority. All those in favor of terminating debate and moving on, press 1. All opposed, press 2. We're voting on moving the question, terminating debate.
So which one?
So we are voting on moving to vote on postponing indefinitely. Okay, I'm going to start over. It's been moved and seconded to terminate debate on postponing indefinitely. So we are going to vote on the indefinite postponement, which is a simple majority. We're going to use our clickers. We are going to use our clickers. All in favor of moving the question? All in favor of moving the question?
Which means what?
Press 1. Okay, we'll wait till the light goes on. All in favor of moving the question, press 1. All opposed, press 2. Sorry about that. I'm glad you're paying attention. It's the first mistake I've ever made. So we have voted on terminating debate, and we have voted 369 to 16 to terminate debate and go back. So we're terminating debate on the indefinite postponement. So now we're going to vote on the indefinite postponement. All those in favor, and we're going to do the clickers again. All those in favor of indefinite postponement, press 1. All opposed, press 2. I think I got caught up in the passion of the whole thing. Okay, so the motion to indefinitely postpone fails. 179 for, 224 in favor. Now we are back on to the main motion, and I think we've heard from almost everybody. Yes, sir?
Dave Ortolani, Orleans, I move the question.
Okay, that makes it easy. Do I have a second? It's been moved and seconded to move the question. So, again, we're going to use the clickers. Requires a 2/3 majority. All those in favor of moving the question? Yes. Question to terminate debate requires a 2/3 majority. All those in favor of moving the question, press 1 for yes, 2 for no. Now you're just trying to confuse me, aren't you? Resoundingly 360 to 34. So we're on to the main question, which requires a simple majority. All those in favor of the article, no, we're on the main motion again.
But use the clickers because it's going to the legislature.
Okay. All those in favor of the Article 32, press 1. All those opposed, press 2. Is it rain? Is it rain? Wow. I'm glad we used the clickers. 204 in favor, 200 opposed. Article passes by the simple majority required. Sorry I got a little discombobulated there, but Michael's going to bring us back into order here.
Yes.
Article 33.
Authorize changes in fee schedule for recreation. I move that this article be accepted and adopted as printed in the warrant.
Been moved and seconded. Any questions or comments? All those in favor of Article 33, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes by the simple majority required. Article 34.
Adopt amended sewer assessment general bylaw. I move that this article be accepted and adopted as printed in the warrant, and that the bylaw becomes effective upon the passage of a special act of the state legislature currently pending as House Number 2196, an act authorizing the Town of Orleans to rescind Chapter 381 of the Acts of 2008 and adopt a new sewer assessment bylaw.
Been moved and seconded. Comments or questions? All those in favor of Article 34, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Is that a simple majority? Article passes by the simple majority required. Article 35.
Reauthorize special act for sewer betterment allocation method and rescind Chapter 381 of the Acts of 2008. I move that this article be accepted and adopted as printed in the warrant, and that the Select Board be authorized to approve the final language of the special legislation.
Been moved and seconded. Any comments or questions? All those in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Passes by the simple majority required. Article 36.
Closing article. I move this meeting be adjourned.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.